All right, welcome back everybody to Coffee Talk. Today's conversation is about reincarnation. And reincarnation is one of those interesting topics that people often like to think about and talk about. But it's one of those things that we don't really speak enough about in Judaism. And the question is, does Judaism believe in reincarnation? So your automatic response will be, yeah, of course, there's something called reincarnation, and therefore Jews believe in it. But that's not true, actually. There's a lot of controversy around the concept of reincarnation within Judaism. And what I want to do with you today a little bit is talk to you about what it is that Judaism believes, what is Jewish reincarnation, how does it work. I want to answer a bunch of questions on, what are the biblical sources for it? Are there biblical sources for reincarnation? How do the Kabbalists understand reincarnation? What is the function? What is the purpose of reincarnation? How does it work? How many times can a person be reincarnated? Is this endless loop of reincarnation that we believe in? Can a human being be reincarnated into an animal or an inanimate object? What are the philosophical implications of believing in reincarnation? And maybe I want to touch about this at the end a little bit if we can. Are there any scientific support for reincarnation? That's what I want to do with you today. So hang on, and God willing, we'll join the ride together. Of course, at any point you have any questions, please let me know. So let's look at the source sheet. You guys don't have it over there, so I will. I wonder if I can send it to you. I can't send it to you right now, but I will read the sources slowly. Okay, the first time we see a source mentioning this concept of reincarnation is in Genesis. Okay, it says as follows. It says, "V'yitzar Hashem Elokim et Adam," and God creates and forms man, afar ve'efar. Right, he is a man that is made of dust of the ground. V'pach ba'apav nishmat chayim, and God blows inside of him the soul, the spirit of life. Ve'yi adam le'veshchaya, and man became a living soul. Okay, this source over here is very clear. Talks about the fact that there is this dual relationship within man. That there is something called the body. Right, God creates a clay form from the earth, the body, and that is a vessel for something called the soul. Nishmat chayim, the soul of life. We would say that the soul is what animates the body, what gives the body the ability to speak, to communicate, to move, and so on and so forth. And you have another verse in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, and it says over here, V'yashov ha'afar al haaretz kishaya, and the dust returned to the earth as it was. V'haruach tashuv el elokim asher natna, and the spirit will be returned to God who gave it. Over here you see this concept of the soul returning to God. So you have a body which decomposes, it's created, it dies. The soul is eternal. Now let's see how we understand this midrash over here. Midrash Agadol in Bereshit says as follows. It says over here that V'yipach ba'apav nishmat chayim, he blew the spirit of he blew the spirit of the soul of life into this person. He says, Bara gufo min haaretz, says he created a body from the land. His spirit is from the heaven. And at the time of his death, the part which comes from the land returns to the land, and the part which comes to the heavens returns to the heavens. So we see this duality very clearly over here, spelled out, super clear. We believe that there is a soul, there is a body, there is this duality between these two different parts, and that's what defines who we are. Okay, now let's go back into the prophets for a second. Let's see if we can find the Torah sources for this. So this is a pasuk in Deuteronomy in Devarim, and this is based on the Targum Onkelos, who says, "Let Reuven live, yichyeh Reuven v'al yomut." Let Reuven live and not die. Let Reuven live and not So what does that mean? Let Reuven live and not die. He says, "Yichyeh Reuven l'chay alma." Let Reuven live an eternal life. Let him not die a second death. Meaning, let Reuven not require the rectification of reincarnation, which would cause him to die a second time. So let's keep going. According to the Kabbalist sources, right, the laws of Yibum are set up that when a brother, lives, when a brother gets married and does not have a child, the widow is not going to remarry anyone, but will first marry what we call the next of kin, or the closest blood relative. Okay, the brother-in-law usually will come to her. She was married did not have any children. The closest brother-in-law has a mitzvah to marry this widow and give her a child. That firstborn child, okay, is a reincarnation of her ex-husband. Okay, this is what the Zohar says over here. The Zohar says this is the secret of reincarnation. The son is born to the husband's brother from his deceased brother's wife, is a reincarnation of the deceased brother, and this is how we preserve the name. The name is given to this child of the dead husband. The widow now has the ability of bringing the spirit back into the world again, which is kind of like a strange thing. Like, well, why is that necessary? So what is the purpose of Yibum and so on and so forth? The Ramban makes it very clear that, look at the next source, number 6. He says that the matter is a great secret from the secrets of the Torah in the genealogy of mankind, which is known to the eyes of the seers, to whose Hashem has given eyes to see and ears to hear, that the one who is wise will understand. The Ramban is referring to the secret of reincarnation, that really the stories in the Torah itself, excuse me, are the stories of reincarnation. Different people making mistakes along their journey, their life journeys, who then need to come back at some point later and fix them. As a matter of fact, us, as the descendants of the Jews, are here to undo some of that which was, we'll call it damaged or not perfected years ago, so that we can elevate our souls and become something bigger, better along the way. All right, any questions before I move on? No? No questions from people here?
So how many times can you be reincarnated?
It depends how bad you are, Marie. No, I'm just joking. No. Well, we're going to get to that. I don't want to answer that right at the beginning. We're going to get to that.
1 second. It means I've been here so many times already. I've been here hundreds of times.
So that's a good question. Just to give you a little bit of, to calm your mind a bit, there are some sources that say that, no, you can't come an infinite amount of times. There's some sources that say that you could only come back 4 times. And the reason why you have to come back 4 times is because there's no way for you to experience the full gamut of your spiritual development without being a Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, man, female. So you get 4 chances to express it. That's one opinion. So therefore, there are some people that say you could only have 4 times you could reincarnate. Some people say it's only 10 times. Some people say it's infinite amount of times. But we'll explain what that all means, because they all have very serious consequence. All right.
When you're an excellent person.
When you're what?
It means that when you're an excellent person.
Yeah.
An amazing person. It means that you've been here many times.
Correct. When you're a perfect person, then you don't come back anymore, right? People that are perfect don't come. The people that are here because they are here to perfect something. People that are perfect are not here because of their past. Perfection only comes through the work, the choices of becoming perfect. Remember that. No one is born perfect. They're only people that work hard on trying to achieve perfection. Okay, so let's keep going. We have a verse over here in Shemot, in Exodus, okay, that if I keep in mind the transgression of the fathers for their descendants to the 3rd and 4th generation. That's a verse in the Torah itself, that God remembers the transgressions up to 3 and 4 generations. So what does that mean? He says there is one tree or soul which is planted in the body once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times, and is punished for the transgressions of the first incarnation. The Father, the Son, the 3rd and the 4th generation are all one soul, which has not been rectified and has not even tried to rectify itself. So according to this Zohar over here in Shemot, we're saying a person can assume accountability for his transgressions in another incarnation. Now think about that. That means that you can be someone who was alive today, and your challenges are not just an expression of your choices, but the challenges are unique to who you were 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 300 years ago. This is the Zohar that says this. The whole book of Eov, the Vilna Gaon says that the whole book of Eov itself is a story about, reincarnation. Okay, look at this. Look at this. Chevra Lomde Mishnah. This is over here. In addition, he says that the factual true account of Yonah's mission is that the Vilna Gaon, throughout his commentary on Sefer Yonah, perceives it as an allegorical interpretation within the text of Yonah itself. Thank you. And Yonah is the neshama, which is charged with the mission of fulfilling his unique mission in this world. And the whole story itself is really just talking about the neshama is a vessel on a journey through the world. The body is that vessel, but the person tries to flee from God and avoiding fulfilling his charge. And eventually, the individual is swallowed up and departs from this world, leaving his task unfinished. So what happens after this? And the word of God came to Yonah, and the second time saying, "Arise, go to Nineveh." Yonah, the soul, is sent back to earth, finally to accomplish its intended mission. Therefore, what we're saying over here is like this. According to this particular part of these sources, we're saying that ultimately God creates a reality where we have multiple opportunities to rectify our unique mission. There's a body-soul dichotomy. The soul is here to elevate itself through the experiences that we are put into. The person that you marry, the children that you have, the family, the community, the circumstances that you're dealing with are not accidental. The people that are in the room, I have someone sitting over here who I found out that his wife is my second cousin through 23andMe. And there's no way in the world we could have been speaking for years and known each other, but had we not had a DNA test telling us that we're somehow related, we would never know that we have a cosmic connection going on. There's so much there. We're still figuring this stuff out. But the idea is like this. Be mindful that yes, there are Jewish sources that teach us that there is this relationship between our choices and our past, our circumstances and where we come from. They don't define us, but certainly they help inform us a little bit of our unique journey. So what is the purpose and the nature of reincarnation? So we said like this: each person is created b'tselem Elokim. Each person is created in the image of God. And according to the Kabbalists, tselem Elokim applies to both Jews and non-Jews. Okay? And they all have a unique mission. Every human being on planet Earth, we believe, has a mission. Now, the foundation of reincarnation is based upon the principle that God created each person with the goal of reaching perfection. How? By using your free will. If we believe in no free will, we can't have this conversation. There's no point in having the conversation. The point is that I can make a bad choice, and I could choose to do something that God does not want me to do, and therefore, in God's infinite love for you and for me, He gives me the opportunity of a retry. I don't know if you ever played any video games, but when you're playing a video game, you have several lives. So think of reincarnation as the several lives that are given to you to kind of like win the game. How do we win the game? You win the game by perfecting the self. How do you know what to perfect? It's very simple. If you could be openly honest with yourself about the things that you are struggling with, that's your avodah. Those are the things that you need to be working on. Okay, and it takes a lifetime, or maybe even lifetimes, of effort to perfect ourselves. Okay, so this is a quote from Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov, a rabbi, a very deep rabbi in Israel that I used to learn with. He says like this. He says the concept of reincarnation is profound, very profound. It says, as taught in Derech Hashem, each human was placed by God in the world to earn perfection. We need to appreciate how great each person can actually become. We don't realize how great we truly are. If you're following along on the paper, we're on page 3, source number 9. Perfection means the fulfillment of every atom that compromises a human being. God has faith in every individual to achieve this goal and does not give up on anyone. Reincarnation can assist a person to reach perfection by perfecting different components of the soul that was not achieved in a previous lifetime, which explains why souls can be reincarnated as either human beings, animals, flowers, or inanimate objects. So according to the Ramchal, and Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov was quoting him, says that yes, we can come back as something else. Now, how, you're going to ask me, does coming back as a animal, a flower, or an inanimate object help me with my reincarnation? Hopefully we'll answer that question by the end of the class. Okay, so that is his point. So let's talk for a minute about the Arizal. The Arizal, in his introduction to the Shara Gilgulim, says that there are several reasons why a soul has to be reincarnated. And he says that number one is repairing the spiritual damage that happened to the soul through transgressions, through sins in the previous life. Number two, he says it's achieving a level of perfection that was not previously able to be achieved. And number three is that one can be reincarnated for the purpose of helping others to reach spiritual perfection. Now, the common denominator with these reasons is that a person is returned to the world in order to complete his essential calling, right? Which was not accomplished before. So reincarnation can also be a form of punishment, right? But nevertheless, it is for the ultimate benefit of the soul itself, which is able to reach its potential by returning to the physical world. Therefore, there is no scenario where you are put back in this world just for no reason. You're only here for a reason. Let's look at the source over here, Rabbi Eliyahu of Davidas, right? Reshit Chochmah. He says like this. He says, why is reincarnation necessary in the soul? He says, since it gets purified in Gehenna anyway, what's the point? If we believe that there's something called Gehenna, there's this purification process, right? Why do we need to have reincarnation? So he says, my teacher, the Ramak, I'm at the bottom of page 3, number 10. My teacher, the Ramak, explained that there are two reasons for reincarnation. Number one, because a person may be lacking in the observance of certain commandments which are needed for perfection. Gehenna cannot purify, but not add that which is lacking. Number two, he says reincarnation can correct and purify things that Gehenna cannot purify. This is because not all sins can be purified in Gehenna. Therefore, a person must return to the world to fulfill his mission of perfection. Yeah, question? No? Okay, great. So what does the Zohar say? He says that as long as a person is unsuccessful in fulfilling his purpose in this world, God will uproot him and replant him over and over again. You, my friends, are recyclable, right? Why is it that God doesn't just create something new? Now, this is a very deep idea. You have value, and with your unique identity, you have a special signature of energy that you are expressing in this world, a special, unique expression of godliness in this world, and that godliness is somewhat eternal. And it's only through your choices that you have the ability of choosing to achieve some level of perfection. Let's look at Sefer Abahir. He says as follows. He says, to explain why good things happen to one righteous person while bad things happen to another is because the latter did evil in a previous life and now is experiencing the consequences. This can be compared to a person who planted a vineyard and hoped to grow sweet grapes, but instead sour grapes grew. He saw that his planting and harvest were not successful, so he tore it out. He cleaned out the sour grapevines and planted again. When he saw that the planting was not successful, he tore it up again and planted again. Okay, so this metaphor that the Sefer HaBahir gives us, talking about a first century book about how we understand why good things happen and bad things happen to people. He's saying it's simple because of where you came from. You are where you are, and because of the choices you made in your past. And we keep doing it over and over again to get you to a place where hopefully you can grow into something more. Rabbi Ramchal, Derech Hashem, he says there's another important principle regarding God's providence. God arranged matters so that man's chances of achieving ultimate salvation should be maximized, as discussed earlier. A single soul can be reincarnated a number of times in different bodies, and in this manner, it can rectify the damage done in previous incarnations. Similarly, it can also achieve perfection that was not attained in its previous incarnations. There are many details in the concept of reincarnation involving the manner in which an individual is judged according to one's incarnation, and how this judgment depends on previous incarnations. The crucial point, however, is the fact that all is truly fair and just. As the Torah states, The Creator's work is perfect and all His ways are just. Tatsur tamim po'alo ki kol darachav mishpat. No created thing can encompass God's thoughts or the profound depth of His plan. We only know that, like all others, such concepts, the principle of reincarnation, as one of man's experiences to follow the rule of fair judgment, is created by God to perfect mankind in general. So he's saying over here that we can't fully understand how this thing works. All we can understand is that we know that it's just, we believe that it's just. Like, why is it just? I'll tell you like this. If you believe God is perfect, then you believe that He is perfectly fair. And therefore, there's no scenario that you find yourself in which is unfair. When you find yourself dealing with something that feels unfair, it has to do with how you're responding to the circumstance that you're in. I saw this great video someone sent me. It was a short, like 30-second video. It says 18-year-olds in 2021, and you see like a bunch of kids being silly on a stage. And it's 18-year-olds in 1941, and you see them like marching off to fight Hitler, ready for World War II. Very different world that we grew up in and our grandparents grew up in. The life that they had certainly was not as convenient and simple as the world that you and I grew up in, right? Why did they grow up in that reality as 18-year-olds, just watching death and so much challenge, people dying and being blown up around them, walking, even if you won the war, walking into a death camp and seeing Jews who were emaciated, walking skeletons, and seeing thousands of bodies stacked, gas chambers, crematorium, it blows your brain. That's hard stuff. I have a hard time seeing it when I go to Poland, and it's 75 years later. Imagine what it was like being a 19-year-old kid going to Poland to as a freedom fighter, and looking at these people treated the way they were treated. It blew their brains out. It's a very different world. People, our grandparents lived in a world where people died at home. They died in the streets. Today, we call Hatzalah, we call the 911, and they take the person away, and they die at the edge of a town in a nice, building, and no one can see it, no one knows. Like, we live in a very different world. We're very much removed from this life and death reality. And I think that it creates a weaker version of humanity. We're probably the weakest group of people that have walked on this planet, I would argue, because of how beautiful, manicured, comfortable we are. It's January right now. 100 years ago, people did not have radiant floor heating. People didn't have, air conditioning when it was too hot in the summer. They didn't have air conditioning in their cars. We live you want heat in the winter? It's very simple. You spent the fall cutting down trees or digging for coal, and you use that as fuel. And if you didn't cut down enough or prepare enough, you were in trouble. We don't live in that world. We have pantries filled with food, and yet we complain about the most amazing things, right? We find it very difficult to overcome the unique challenge that we're in. But I can only tell you like this: the reason why we are here is because this is the challenge that we can handle. God does not give you a challenge you cannot overcome. And therefore, if you're here right now, it's because this is the challenge that you need to be working on. And the question is, well, how are you going to overcome the challenge you find yourself in? Well, it depends. You could either lose yourself to the idea that, well, it's unjust, and therefore it doesn't matter what you do because it's unjust. The outcome is irrelevant because the circumstance is unfair, so why should I try? The game is rigged. But if you believe that there is justice, and you believe that the circumstance that you're in is uniquely yours, then you'll understand that the choices you make and how you respond to the situation you're in will determine everything. It's all about your choice. It's all about how you're going to respond to the situation that you find yourself in. Okay, let's keep going. We're on page 5, and we're at number 14, Sefer HaCharedim. Okay, now, is the soul aware that it is in a reincarnated state? So he says like this, he says, the Kabbalah says that even though a soul reincarnated in a human body is unaware of its initial incarnation, nevertheless, when it's incarnated in the body of an animal or a bird, it is aware of its former incarnation. And it has anguish and regret over how it descended from a human form to the form of a beast. That is terrifying. According to the Sefer Charedim, he believes that when someone comes back into an animal or an inanimate object, they're aware of it, and that pain is there for the tikkun of that particular neshama. Okay? What determines the way one is reincarnated? Let's see the Arizal and Shara Gilgulim. He says that after a person dies, he's punished for his transgressions in many ways, even before he enters Gehenom. These ways are called Gilgul. He may be reincarnated in an inanimate object, or in a plant, or in an animal, or in a human. Most people will not escape their being reincarnated in these ways. The degree of the transgression determines whether he will be reincarnated in a plant, an animal, etc. Okay, so according to this, yes, you can be reincarnated into different life forms or inanimate forms. All forms are made up of energy, so even a rock has an energy signature to it, right? This chair that I'm sitting on is made up of energy on a cosmic level, and therefore everything in the material world, you have the power of being put back into that actual entity itself. So, well, what does this all mean practically? Like, what are the philosophical consequences of accepting this belief into Judaism? Okay, how does incorporating the possibility of reincarnation into our worldview change our perspective on a whole bunch of things? So let's see what happens if we have the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says like this. He says, a person may repeatedly despair of correcting his faults and conclude that if God decrees that he dies because of his failure, then there is nothing he can do about it. However, this is a mistaken attitude. The soul will be reincarnated over and over again in this world until the correction is achieved. God gives you many lives to come back to get it right. And even if you made bad choices, you made a mistake, and you realize there's regret, there's charata, right? You do tshuva, you will be given another opportunity to get it right. Rizal, Shara Gilgulim. Yeah, go for it.
I can understand the idea of people coming back as another being, another person.
Yeah.
But as an animal, plant, inanimate object, how can you make the Shabbat? How could you make those changes?
I don't think you're right. You can't, but you serve a greater purpose. And I think that the fact that it's not just you're a rock, it's the awareness of being a rock that's part of the teshuvah. Now, he doesn't say how long you're in there for. Is it for a split second? Is it for a year? I mean, there are rocks that are thousands of years old. Like, you're not a rock forever. So I don't understand. I agree with you. I don't understand it either. But I think that the point is that there's like, if you think of like a soul as energy, which I do, and it's probably not, but this is my own sci-fi geeky way of understanding it, is that if a soul is energy and everything around you is energy, energy can't be destroyed. You can only transfer energy from one source to another source. And therefore, for some reason, there's some benefit for that soul to spend time filling up the energy of a rock. How it works, I don't know. No one does. But according to these, the Arizal, who is a master Kabbalist, he says that it works for some reason. How does it work? I don't know the mechanics.
So what happens? The rock gets crushed, rocks gets destroyed?
No, I think that no. I think that maybe the rock becomes a holding place for the soul until it finds the right body to come back into, or the right timeline for that soul to come back into. The right situation has to kind of reconfigure itself so that everything aligns with that neshama to be challenged in that unique way. I don't know. The point of this class today is at least to kind of like give you a little bit of the sources to see that there are plenty of sources that talk about reincarnation, how all the mechanics works. We're not going to understand that today. I'm certainly not an expert in reincarnation. I have no idea. At the end of this, I'll tell you guys a story about an experience I had, which is fascinating, and maybe you had them as well. But anyway, okay, let's keep going over here. Let's just try to finish the sources over here. We're the Vilna Gaon, right? The Vilna Gaon, Emin Shlema. We did that already right now, right? The Arizal said...
No, you didn't. You didn't do the Vilna Gaon.
Okay,
Let's do it now.
We said that, yes. Okay, no, we actually skipped the Arizal. She's right. Number 17. You will therefore understand that which we find in the Talmud, that a certain sage was careful in certain mitzvot to a greater degree than in other mitzvot, and other sage was conscientious of it in a different mitzvah, as we find that the one Amorah asked this fellow, what was your father careful in? And his response was as conscientious in the mitzvah of tzitzit or tefillin, etc. The secret of the matter is that every sage was particular in the mitzvah that he was lacking during a previous incarnation, either entirely or in one of its details. This is also the secret discussed in the Talmud, that one person chose to refine a particular character trait, whereas another chose to refine a different trait. For each one chose a trait according to his incarnation. Therefore, your incarnation right now, your trait, your circumstance, the things that you are drawn to are not accidental. That's what you need to do in order to achieve your unique mission in this world, your incarnation. The Vilna Gaon says as follows: somebody who was wicked, a wicked person in the first incarnation, God brings him down in the time of the waning of the moon, and he lives a life of poverty, even though he is now righteous. This is a righteous person for whom bad things happens. This we call tzaddik v'ralo. And of this, the sages said, length of life, number of children, and the extent of one's sustenance do not depend on one's merit, but on one's mazal. And that's what mazal means. Mazal isn't just the moon. The mazal is what the neshama needs to do its own tikkun itself. And that is the Vilna Gaon. Okay, so the next two sources I have over here discuss this idea of a scientific evidence for past lives. Okay, this is written by someone by the name of Carol Bownen. She has something called the Past Life Forum from a website called www.childpastlives.org. And this is a story of a reincarnation of the Twin Tower firemen, right? Listen to the story. Okay, I've been looking for on the internet for someone talking about their child having a past life, memories from 9/11. My son has been talking about it for almost a year now. He's almost 4. He started out insisting that he doesn't just want to be a firefighter, that he is a firefighter. That he would get up in the morning, put on his fire outfit, his big reward for being for potty trained, and tell me how he's going to work. He would take his play axe and pretend to chop down the wall, etc., because there was a fire behind them. That's how it started, and then it would just progress. We were reading a Curious George book about him in the big city, and he said that very matter-of-factly, that bad men knocked those buildings over, pointing to the Twin Tower pictures. He had also never been exposed to 9/11 scenes. I am also a stay-at-home mom. Then he said planes broke in them, and he couldn't help. He also told her there were people jumping because they wouldn't want to wait to get to them. He told me he was stuck and he was trying to break through the wall to get people out because they were calling for them. He has also gone to extensively about the type of truck that he was in, the color of the color bucket on the truck, and how it feels to come down from up high on the bucket. Very detailed about firefighting, and he stated he's not a firefighter. He's fire rescue. We have no firefighters in the family, but the details I can go on forever with. He also talks about his friend Mike, who was a firefighter. It opened my eyes to the whole new reality. Her husband still does not want to believe it, but the details are far too much for a 3-year-old to make up. It makes me feel better that someone else is experiencing this too. These are a forum where people coming from different backgrounds are all talking about children post 9/11 having memories of being a fighter. There's this website called Indopedia. It's a ideological knowledge base in reincarnation, and this is basically a database of evidence of reincarnation. It says as follows: "This is perhaps the most significant anecdotal evidence in the regard of phenomenon of young children spontaneously sharing what appear to be memories of past lives, phenomenon which has been reported even in cultures that did not hold a belief in reincarnation. Upon investigating those claims, Stevenson and others have identified individuals who have died a few years before the child was born, whom seemed to meet the description the children provided. In the most compelling cases, autopsy photographs reveal deceased individuals have fatal injuries that correspond to the unusual marks of birth defects of a child. For example, marks on the chest and back of a child line up precisely with the bullet entry and exit wounds in the body of an individual who had been shot. Again, there's countless stories like this that I've heard of. There was actually a famous story a couple of years ago in Israel where there was a Druze boy who was born. He was 5 years old, and he came to his parents and said, "I was here before. I actually lived in the town next door, and I was murdered, and I know where my body is, and I know the guy who killed me." So this was an Israeli media about
becoming spooky.
Yeah, it's very spooky stuff. Sorry, it's gonna get scary. Hold on. So, he got his parents to take him to the next door village. He showed them where the body was. They dug it up and they found the body of a 12-year-old boy who was there. Okay, he said he was 12. He said that he had a head injury, and he showed them the person who did it, who's still alive at the time. And there's a whole investigation. They proved this guy was a murderer, killed the boy. It's a crazy story. And there's countless stories like this. I mean, like, you could Google it. There's
How is it that they have the consciousness?
some people are able to keep their conscious. There are some people have this awareness. Some people are not. There's a guy named Rabbi Yefim Svirsky. You could Google him. He's a psychologist who's also a rabbi. He's from Moscow, a brilliant, like, old school thinker. And he does something called regression therapy, where he gets you into a hypnotic place and regresses you to re-experience reincarnations, past lives.
That's that book,
Many Lives, Many Masters. Same idea. That, like, he was able to get you to this state of I guess an unconscious state, and regress you to a previous life. And he had people who I interviewed him. I met with him actually, and he told me that he has cases where there was a woman who started speaking Spanish. She was Israeli. She never spoke Spanish, knew nothing about, never been to Spain. She was a young woman in her mid-20s, and she had very detailed information about where she was buried in some church in a monastery in Toledo. So he started doing research. Let's figure it out. They called the church, like, yeah, there's no cemetery here. There's no grave. Nothing here. So they called them back a few months later. Said, actually, we did renovations in the basement, and we found the cemetery in the basement. And, like, crazy stories like this. And there was actually a famous New York Times article that was written in the I think this is 2003, 2004. The article, I have it if you want it. I'll send it to you. The story was called Intergenerational Memories, and it's about a woman who lived in South America. She was a New York Times reporter, and her whole life she felt a very strong pull to go to Spain. She had no idea why. She wanted to go to Toledo, and she decided to go on a trip. She goes there, and when she was there, she had these crazy deja vu feelings, like she was all there already. And she went to this one town, and she started having these weird, like, flashbacks, almost like memories of the place. It felt so familiar to her. So she ended up calling her grandmother, and her grandmother says, we actually have family from Toledo going. She's like, why didn't you ever tell me? She's like, yeah. She says, and anyway, it turns out she finds out in Toledo that she finds her grandmother's ancestry, and it turns out that she in fact was Jewish, and she had no idea. But she was compelled to go to this place, and she had no idea why. So she started doing research on this topic, and this is completely coming from a scientific place. She was saying like this, that where does this come from? So she found in the same year, they did this study on butterflies, that a butterfly that was born in a bush in London would fly away, go someplace else. And they tagged different generations of butterflies, and they found that 4 generations later, that butterfly from the same butterfly line would come back to the same branch that the grandfather was born in. Ki'ilu, it knew where it came from. And they started this idea that there are memories that are passed down and locked in our DNA. So you have something called, like, intergenerational trauma, where if your grandmother had some kind of trauma, it could skip the mother and go to the grandchild. And the grandchild is dealing with that kind of trauma. The memories are passed down, so it's baked inside of us. And I think to me that's the greatest proof of some. If you don't want to take it from a cosmic place, it's too hard for you to think about it in terms of souls. At the very least, you could understand it from a biological place. That memories are stored in different places in our DNA, and that somehow we're able to access them. It's interesting that when you do the regression therapy, which I did, the way he gets you there is he gets you to a meditative place, and he asks you to calm yourself down, and he asks you to scan your body and stop if you feel any tension in any area of your body. So he said that he saw people who like started becoming convulsed because they were in a car accident and they were re-experiencing a car accident. He saw people black and blue marks re-emerging. So like some very supernatural stuff. And when you find that tension inside of you, that's usually where that memory is locked up. And we know this actually, that there is not just muscle memory stored in your muscle, but there's actually memories that are stored in your gut. Many of our memories are stored in our gut, not actually in our mind. We're learning all kinds of things. This is a very new type of topic, which is fascinating, but certainly a lot to tell us. So what's the overarching lesson for today? Okay, I think the idea is like this. Reincarnation is not about, okay, I'm going to get it wrong, don't worry about it. Rabbi said, I'll get 1,000 chances to get it right. I think the point of this conversation is to let you know that A, your choices matter. B, is that the circumstances that you're in may seem unfair. They might not be unfair. They might be exactly what you need to grow to become something bigger. And for me, that's the lesson of reincarnation. I don't know where I'm going to be in 100 years from now. I don't know exactly who I come from, or what I did or what I didn't do or what I need to do. The only thing that I do know is where I am right now. And I know that where I am right now, the challenges that I have are uniquely my own, and that if I overcome these challenges where I am right now, that'll help me become a bigger, better, greater person. That's all I know. How does that work with reincarnation? The question I often get is, well, how does reincarnation work? Like, if we believe in Techiyat Hametim, we're all going to come back, resurrection of the dead. So which Gilgul do you come back as? Like, who do you come back as? Are you the soul from 2020? Are you the soul from 1820? From 1500? From 1 BC? Like, where do you come back as? And the answer I give is that each soul is a slice of the old soul. So for example, if this is your soul, okay, and your soul comes into this world, think of it like a comet coming into the earth. It breaks up into smaller pieces, okay, or an asteroid breaking into smaller comets, okay. Those smaller pieces are different parts of your soul. One part can be your husband, it could be your best friend, it could be your teacher, a neighbor, sibling. There's a certain cosmic connection,
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi. To be a rabbi.
Yeah, or a rabbi. You definitely can be one. There's no question, Marie. I'll say it like this. I'll say it even more than that. Right? The people that are here today, that are watching, and the people that are here, not an accident that you and I are all in the same place right now.
Hi, Marie.
Robin sends regards, Marie.
Thank you.
No, there's not an accident that we're all in the same place. For some reason, somehow, we're all interconnected. There's 7 billion people on planet Earth. And there's a very small group of people that we end up rubbing our elbows with. Not an accident. We're here, part of a global greater mission, and each of us, our choices will help determine where we go, how we respond to the situation, and hopefully we choose to do better. I don't know about you, but I don't want to come back as a rock. I don't want to come back as an animal. I just know that I accept what I have, and I try to do the best with, make the best choices with what's given to me, and hopefully we do what is good. Who do you come back with as far as the Techiyat Hametim? There's infinite versions of you, and each version is uniquely different, and therefore each version will have its own unique expression of identity. So all of them will come back, because they're all you and they're all not you. Yeah, Robin, what do you want to ask?
No, it's just, when I started learning about reincarnation or even having this idea, it was a time in my life where I lost a few close friends very young, or my brother passed away very young.
Right.
And it was just, I felt like life was unfulfilled and just can't be all there is.
Right.
So it gave me a comfort to know that, so there's a reason why someone passed away, even though we can't understand it, but he could have fulfilled his mission in the world, or he could have fulfilling a previous life, or maybe he wasn't yet finished and will be back in some other form. So there was a real comfort to me to know that we don't just disintegrate, we're gone, we're
Right.
lives and we're buried.
Right.
There is a neshama, there
Right.
is a soul, there's
Right.
something that survives us. that
100%.
goes on and is always there. So I thought that was really important to.
100%. I agree. I think it is important. You know, I just had
That convinced me more than anything.
I was at a brit yesterday for a young boy in the community. His father passed away about 4 or 5 years. Young guy, young man in his like late 40s, passed away. He has a son who was in his 20s who just had a baby. And they, at the brit, of course, they named this boy after the father. And that custom of giving that name is like, it's so clear that that custom is tied into this concept that we're drawing from the past so that the past has an opportunity to create something new in the future. So that to me was like the biggest proof that we have this custom, that an ancient custom of recognizing that what was still is and has the potential of drawing out its potential later.
And if you think about the martyrs of the Holocaust,
Yeah.
Those lives, infants, people, and innocent people, their lives have to have some meaning. So for them to just be gone, it's just not a good feeling. I feel like those lives still move on.
100%. 100%. All right, I'm going to end this class. If you have questions, I'll take them now. If not, may you all be blessed in being able to actualize your full potential, to recognizing that the choices that you have, the circumstance that you're in are uniquely yours. Use it to be the best version of yourself, and be blessed in all that you do. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.